Hey there, everybody, and welcome to a new series. This time I am covering Mark McLaughlin's War and Peace. It's a game of Napoleonic Wars. This is, of course, the new edition that came out a few years ago. It's a massive game. I've only got part of it set up here. You can see this is the edge of one of the two map boards, and there's tons of layouts and stuff like that too that I've only got some of set up on the side. So it's a big footprint game, but it's I think the only one that I own of the Napoleonic Wars. I know there's one that's kind of like For the People that's card driven, but this is the only one that I have. It's a period that I enjoy, but I don't know as much about as others, the American Civil War and the First World War, but still nonetheless very interesting. So I decided to pick this one up. And I decided to keep the Spain theme. My most recent series was Almoravid, which takes place right in this area here. So decided to keep Spain. I've also got this new camera setup. Let me know what you think. Obviously, this shadow and my hand shadow is problematic. I've kind of framed it where the majority of things going on will be not in the shadow, but this is a new overhead camera, and I'm using my phone, which is it's an iPhone 13 Pro, so it's really crisp, and I think it'll be better with the lighting. The other videos had a little bit of a problem with this lighting in this room, so let me know what you think. So this is the Peninsular War campaign. Picks up in 1808, which is kind of in the last third or last half of the war. Napoleon has marched his forces into Spain, ostensibly to take Portugal, which was a British ally. But in conjunction with that, he has also deposed the King of France, installed his brother on the throne, because Spain, while a French ally, had been violating the continental system, was still trading with the English, and so he basically hit two birds with one stone. Well, as soon as that happened, as soon as he deposes the King of Spain, as you can imagine, they didn't take too kindly to that, and they rebelled, and Spanish forces rise up. So at the beginning here, you have the French forces kind of spread out across some major cities, and then the Spanish forces in the places basically the French aren't. As this goes on, both more French and British forces will arrive, and the objective of this scenario is you can win auto victory if the French control every city in Spain, which is near to impossible, and the Spanish if the French control no cities, plus they have a unbesieged strength point in these two up here, which are basically the French supply cities. So also difficult, but probably more likely than the French. The French are going to have to achieve it early if they want to do it, because Wellington's going to be coming in. He's going to be swinging pretty early. So that's the way things look to start off with. The one big interesting thing that is going to be a problem for the French early is supply. So this game works similarly. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Works pretty similarly to other games in the way the supply works when it comes to hex and counter. So these are the supply cities here, and you have to trace 3 hexes, and terrain modifiers are included in that. So like this is 2 hexes away, but it costs an extra movement point to go over this mountain range, the Pyrenees. So it's 1, 2, 3. So he's in supply. So now we trace 1, 2, 3. He's in supply. 1, 2, 3. So it does not get over this mountain range outside of Madrid. So everybody down here, basically all the other French forces, including Barcelona, are all out of supply. So one of the first things the French are going to have to do is get those guys back in that supply. So some of these forces are small enough that they can survive on their own and roll on attrition tables. And this time of the year in this part of Europe is pretty forgiving. So they can survive on their own, foraging and that sort of thing. But at some point, they're going to have to reconnect the supply line in here. And you have to, it goes by strike points, you kind of have to maintain it. You know, you have to have a garrison unit, basically. Whereas in other games, you can just like capture a space and then like that counts as a supply train. But that is not the way it is here. You have to physically leave forces behind. And of course, that makes them vulnerable, which is kind of the whole point. The Spanish are pretty much everywhere the French aren't. And their forces are going to become more irregular. So they have pretty much all regular forces, infantry and cavalry, up here on their board. But as the game goes on, they're going to have a lot more militia and a lot more partisans to join. The Portuguese will also have some of those as well, which will be represented by British force markers. So that's the first look into how things are going to go. We can hop in here. The French always go first, and like I said, they're going to try and consolidate, reestablish the supply lines, and then go out and fight these Spanish forces and try and isolate them as quickly as possible before the British show up. So we just finished up the May turn of 1808. Not too much happened. You can see all these unsupplied markers here. These are all French units. They're unsupplied right now, but they will be in supply at the beginning of the next turn. They put a force here which connects these three. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 1, then 1, 2. Same here. I think actually he will be 1, 2. I think actually he'll be out of supply, but it's a small force, so it doesn't really matter. And then this guy's also in supply. So they obviously over here, Lisbon is out of supply, but I think he's just going to try, and I think it's leader B or leader A. He's just going to try and hold out. He's only got 3 strength points, so the British forces are going to arrive pretty soon. I'd rather at least give them a fight in Lisbon, because it's I think it has like a fortress or something. I don't know if the capitals are technically any different. I know they're a major city, but I think they have like a special symbol. I don't know if that just means there was a battle there. You can see like here, there was a battle fought here. I don't know if that means anything special, but either way, it's a major city, so it can be besieged. So I'd rather at least slow them up there than just let them in. The Spanish just shifted. These supply lines are very fragile. There's only 3 strength points here, 1 here. So a strike here could sever those supply lines pretty easily, and they're going to keep, consolidating their forces. They did make an advance here. Palafox besieged down the 2 Italian strength points. What are they called? Allied minor states, or I forget what the Allies forces are called. But the Italian states have troops here under the French command, and they just decided to pull back within the walls of Barcelona, and so a siege has begun. So we'll advance the turn marker, and we're on to June of 1808 now. Okay, we're at the end of the June turn. This game actually is pretty simple. The rule book is like not even, let's see, so I don't get it wrong, 18 pages with optional rules. I mean, that's light for a game of this size, and most of the fiddly bits are involving the campaign and the particular rules around that. But I mean, combat is simple and effective. The supply rules are simple and effective. Like, everything about this game is pretty nip and tuck, to be honest. So I'm really flying through this. Plus, a lot of these early months are organization. So the French got 10 reinforcement points up here. Victor and a nondescript leader arrived up here in Bayonne, and so then they basically split and had Becerrez go west to Burgos, and Victor go east to Saragossa. He's going to go and try and relieve the siege at Barcelona. He may be joined by leader C if he can force march over there. But they're going to try and relieve the siege at Barcelona, and then more shifting around of forces. The Spanish, Castaños is coming up this way to try and get to Valencia before the French do, and then Blake, who is got a pretty sizable force, is going to meet up with Cuesta and go and attack Burgos. That'll happen next turn, most likely. The only thing about it will probably be that Murat will come up from Madrid and probably try and force a climactic field battle there to kind of knock Blake out, because they know that Blake and Castaños are the two largest forces for the Spanish, and getting them out of commission would be awesome early. The only thing I'll have to worry about is shifting north will expose you in the south. So Castaños could always either knock out this French force and then march on Madrid, or bypass this French force and march on Madrid. So we may leave Valencia for now and shift this force up to Madrid to hold. The only thing is that there are 3 strength points in Valencia, and he is currently at, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. So he can only pick up 2 of those, carry with him, and then leave some behind. But I mean, he could be at a full strength of 10, and he's not a great leader. He only is a 0, so he doesn't get to add anything, but it's still a dangerous force to have running around. So I forgot to show you the roll for the surrender last time, but I'll do it this time. It was you have to roll a 1 or less, and it was like a 6, I think. The besieging rules are simple. You just have to roll less or equal to the number on the besieged marker. So it's currently 2. It's been 2 turns that they've been besieged. So they roll a 2. Well, there you go. So this will not matter. This will fall. And these 2 Italian, there's 1 Italian actually and 1 French, are taken out, and perfect timing as well, because it will not be long before the French arrive, and actually the numbers will be even when that battle occurs, which is why they want to get this other leader alongside. So these 2 strength points, I believe, go to, I'm not sure like how prisoners work. There is a list for it. I don't know if it is used in the scenario version, but basically, sorry about that. Basically, whenever forces are eliminated, they go to the force pool, and then you can use replacement points to bring them back, and you get a certain number of replacement points every time. So first casualties of the war, this time by surrender, go to the French. So that'll do it, and we go on to July of 1808. All right, now at the end of July, whenever these turns get more dynamic, I'll show you a bit more, but so much of this is still, everybody's setting up. Victor here was joined by the leader C, I think, and the idea was that leader C is going to move first and try and force march down here, and so they can get in position to attack Barcelona. He failed that roll, actually moved 0. So he'll stay here. Victor did not want to march on his own and risk fighting alone. In hindsight, he probably should have at least moved down to here or here, because Palafox in his movement just crossed across the Elbe River, and is now, free to march down south. Here in Valencia, big risk the French took. Out of supply, crossed over to besiege, and they wanted to do this so they could get at least 1 siege roll in, and hopefully 2, because they knew that Castaños was marching up, and that he would have to force march 3 in order to get in position to attack. So if they can just get him to fail that roll, or maybe he had to force march for 2, anyways, get him to fail the roll, then they would get a second roll at it. And so that actually is what happened, and it's quite painful for him, because he had to leave 1 behind to maintain supply, and then actually lost a strength point trying to force march. And so he's down to 6 strength points where he had 8 before. So that's a bit painful, but fortuitous for the French. Murat, during the reinforcements phase, left, and Joseph Bonaparte arrived, the newly installed King of Spain. So he is in Madrid, not a particularly inspiring military leader, 0 rating. So he has arrived on the battlefield, and he will take command of Murat's forces. And then lastly, this siege here, Blake and Cuesta now are besieging Bessarres and Burgos. They're going to get to roll here. I'll show that to you. This would be huge if they were able to get this roll off here. But if it does not succeed, then the determination will be whether or not Victor is going to come back, because he can get there with a full force march. If Joseph is going to come up, exactly what's going to happen here, because they could really kind of pincer move in here, leave Palafox and Castaños to come down to Valencia. Let them do a similar sort of thing. So I don't know. There's a couple of options here if this roll does not work. So here we go. We're gonna go. We need a 1. The Spanish need a 1 because it's the first turn this has been besieged, and it's a 4. So a no-go there. So that'll take us to August. And this is where the British forces start arriving. It's small at first, but it will be Wellington joining. It only has 2 infantry points to start off with, but obviously having Wellington at all is going to be big time. So this, is this the beginning of the forces coming to the aid of the Spanish. So here at the beginning of the August term, I really should have shown you guys this at the very first term, but I didn't think about it because such little went on. We wouldn't have really been able to go over the full turn sequence. As usual, this isn't a teaching moment, these videos, but if you want to learn how to play the game, Gilbert Collins, I think is his name. Anyways, he's literally a whiz on like the War of 1812, Napoleonic Wars, the U.S. Civil War. I think that's his name, but he does great videos. He kind of examines the difference between this version and the original version. Also, a Tabletop Templar, give them a look up because he did a series on how to play, talking about movement and combat. He runs through, I think, 1 or 2 of the scenarios, the introductory scenario, and then maybe like Austerlitz. So if you want to learn how to play, go take a look at that. I, of course, read the rule book and then used that as a supplement to kind of see stuff in action. So he's definitely a great resource for that. I will run over the turn sequence for this turn, just to kind of give you an idea of what the heck I'm doing. And whenever I anticipate there being a big turn, I'll go over in more detail, but you really haven't missed much so far. Okay, so I would prefer that this be a little bit different. As it stands, the French player does all of this stuff, and then the anti-French player does all of this stuff. I would prefer it if everybody did attrition, everybody did reinforcement and alliance, and then the 2 respective sides just did ground movement and combat. But as it stands, it's everybody does all of this. So supply, we check it, mark out a supply. Attrition, the French had to roll here, and over here. Nothing came of any of that. Then they go to the reinforcements phase, which during the August turn, there are none. They don't get any more until October. They'll get a replacement. They got a replacement point, which they used to bring an extra piece onto the board, and then ground movement. So the 1 strength point that they brought on is here in Bayonne. You just buy those 1 replacement point for 1 strength point. So they're gonna get to move their generals here. So there's 2 here. They're gonna move 1 at a time. That's how you have to do it anyways. It says that you can, for convenience purposes, move them both together. But when you force march, I think you kind of have to be a little bit particular. So I'm gonna move Victor first. So Victor is gonna move into this hex, which costs 2, plus 1 to cross over the rear hex side. So that's 3. That's his entire movement allowance, 3. So he is going to attempt to force march to continue here. So I actually don't like that they put this purple line, because if you look, it's really hard to tell. Is that connect? I think it is. I think that there is a connection between those 2 hexes. The reason I say is because he can force march 2 to here, and then have the other leader march to there, and then they've kind of formed a blockade, which is what they're going to do. So he looks at this forced march table, and so you look at the die rolls compared to how many spaces you want to go. We want to go 2 spaces, and then we're going to roll a die. He gets -1 for being all French, +1 for being in Spain. So the one thing they're going to have to focus on here is supply, because they are 1, 2, 3 away right here, 1, 2, 3 hexes, and then that's 1, 2, 3 to there. So he's probably gonna have to drop a a point there. He'll probably have the other leader do it though. So he's going to attempt to move 2. So we're going to roll a die. It's a 6, which isn't good. I don't think they get to add, it doesn't say here at least, their rating. So a 6 on the 2 is done, so he gets to move no spaces. So now we're going to try with leader C. The good thing here is we don't have to worry about the supply as much now. So he's going to leave 1 here in Saragossa. Leader C to maintain that supply line and also capture that city for victory conditions. Basically have to leave a piece behind. You don't place like control markers like you do in U.S. Civil War. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3, and he's going to attempt to march just 1 to there, and that's a bit more forgiving. 4 plus 1 minus 1, it stays the same. He does get to move the 1 space, so he'll come down to here. So you can see they're attempting to hem in Palafox. They thought about coming over, but they're going to let Murat do that. I'm sorry, Joseph do that instead. And like I said, it's so close here. Now, actually, what they should have done, I'm going to do this instead. They should have moved him here and then have him force march there. So that's what I'm going to do instead, rather than trying to cast this very wide net. And say, oh well, you rolled the dice and then did it. Like if he would have rolled to 1, and he rolled a 6, so it would have failed anyways. So nothing is altered or done anything by that. I consider that a legal move, and it doesn't matter what you think. You're not here playing the game. So that's 1 movement. You move everybody, and then do the rest. We're not going to initiate a combat here. We're going to let Palafox decide if he would like to do that, but we're not going to. Up here, we're going to move a force here. You can see Joseph is here. He is going to move. Let's see here. Actually, they did cut the supply off. These guys are actually going to be out of supply, I believe. That's 1, 2. It's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so that was actually one of our supply lines there because it wraps around that way. And I think that severs the supply. I'll check because I don't know. Whenever he comes in, they do it. You do a supply check before you attack. So if I get back in supply, then I'm okay. But I'll double check all of that. But I'll do it off camera. So he's gonna go. Let's just count otherwise. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this, or 1, 2, 3, 4 actually, because this is in the mountain hex. I'm debating whether or not I should leave a piece here and then pick up this Polish one, which is I think what I should do. And for this, I'm just gonna slide him over. It doesn't matter, or I guess it does actually, because if you're all French or you're French satellite forces, there's a difference. So actually it does matter. So let me 2, 4, 5. I'll drop 1 to Madrid. And then he'll go 1, 2, 3. And here he is in supply, 1, 2, 3. There's no like area of control or whatever, zone of influence, having flashbacks to the Empire of the Sun. So now he can declare combat. You can declare as many combats as you want. You just have to be adjacent. You don't have to be in the hex. And somebody let me know, I don't think there's actually any mechanism for withdrawal from or avoid combat. This game is much more about, you can have small battles and just fight 1 combat round and then retreat, withdraw. So I don't think I see anything about avoid combat. I know like if a side has more cavalry, they can do certain things, and then there's like a matrix back here where you can select like chits, which is a really cool system. I really like it, this tactical matrix, where, you know, each player picks, okay, well, we're going to charge this time in hopes that they do something and then we get a bonus or whatever. I'm not going to do that here because it's just too much crunching for me playing alone, but playing opposed, it's pretty cool. So they'll declare a battle here, and then these other guys aren't going to move. This will change to the two side. Technically, you'll do the combat first, but just to show you, because I'm going to go off screen before getting into this combat. So you do all the movements. Hold on. And you do all the movements, and then you go combat initiation. So we have done all the moves that we can do or want to do, and now we will go into that combat phase. So let me check those, the rules about supply and everything, and then come back. Okay, so I actually don't see anything in the rule book about I can't find it, I'm sure it's in there, about the supply stuff. It just says in the summary, turn sequence summary, that you do a supply check, and everyone is in supply. So I don't know, I'm gonna go off that. Someone let me know if you know where it is. So the way this works is Joseph is attacking a besieged city. So Besserez cannot join the fight until the second round of combat, assuming it happens. So Blake and Cuesta have a combined 8 strength points to a combined 6 strength points for Joseph. So during round 1, it's not based off of attackers and defenders like other ones are. It's actually larger and smaller. So the larger force will roll, and I'll bring this back up in a second, but the larger force will roll the 2 die, and then there will be modifiers. The modifiers are based off of leadership, so the Spanish will get a +1, because of the larger force it's plus, the smaller force is minus. Then you'll do morale. On the strength points, there are these little stars there, and the majority of forces, the biggest size, the biggest number of strength points for a certain unit, it's a bit vague, but basically whatever the majority plurality of pieces is that has the stars, you'll take that off of. So in this instance, a plurality of French pieces have a 2-star morale value. They have one Polish unit that has a 1 star, so it'll be +2 for the French, and it will be or -1 for the French, +1 for the Spanish, because all their forces have 1. So 2 for the French and 2 for the Spanish means that the modifiers are completely wiped out. There are none. So once those modifiers are done, they will roll for the result. So let me back out a little bit, and I'll roll over here. Northeast is Spain. So 2 5s, so 10. And so we are here, and the odds are 1 to 1, because it's not technically, but that's the worst odds you can get. Or I guess if you go the larger force, it's not quite 3 to 2. So I guess it's still 1 to 1. 10, the modified dice roll is 10. So you look at the larger and the smaller. So the larger force is going to lose, well, technically you don't, this isn't where you get the losses at. You go total strength points in the smaller force. So it's really interesting the way this works. So the damage dealt is based off of how many the smaller forces are. So they had 6 strength points. So the Spanish will lose 1, and the French will lose 2 because they had a D1 result. Back here you can see it's 1 in D1. So they 6 will lose 2 and be demoralized by 1. So they go from 6 to 4. and the Spanish go down to 7. So now here's the interesting decision that they have to make. We go to round 2, and the Spanish can withdraw. The French can withdraw. So the Spanish here are thinking, okay, well, Becerrez is going to come in. He has a +1, which means that the modifiers are going to be the same of 0, because the demoralized 1 will reduce the French morale from 2 to 1. But you add Becerrez, who has a 1 leadership rating, so it's going to stay the same. And then he has 3 strength points, I believe. 4 strength points. So 4 + 4 is 8. You're now down. They have 8, you have 7. So you're going to basically do the same thing, but you're going to have the worst forces here. So that's, you could just withdraw now, and the combat would end. You did a little bit of hit, and then you got out. You know, you hit more than you took, and you can leave. If they decide to stay, the French can withdraw, which, given what I just said, they probably won't. If they did withdraw, though, you can do a thing called counterattacking. Then you can get another combat round in, and then it can go back and forth. So, like, you know, the French withdraw, the Spanish counterattack. Let's say that goes really well for the French. Well, then the Spanish withdrawal, the French could counterattack. I mean, you can go on and on in these combat rounds. They're very simple and quick, but they're quite dynamic. So the Spanish, I mean, sorry about that. The Spanish, I think, feel pretty good at where they're at. We have a demoralized French units. They could stick around for one more round and just try and see, because you're going to be at 1-1 again. Man, I don't know, because they're in a pretty good spot. I mean, this is going to be one of the best opportunities at even numbers here. Well, shoot, that's tough. Oh man, I don't want to regret it, but they're going to stay one more round, because if they can get that, they can get the larger force thing again, then they're going to be in a pretty good spot. So let me just double check. That's 4 for Becerrez and 4 for Joseph, and I can swivel you around here so you can take a look at what I'm looking at over here. So this is the alliance thing. You can see there's Becerrez and there's Joseph, so 8 total. And then the Spanish were a little bit further up. Sorry, this is not great for moving while you're filming. I won't do this much, I promise, but just so you can see it. We have Blake here, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 to 8. Let me get back here. There you go. So that means that they will be the smaller force this time. So Becerrez is in. I don't know if you have to make a roll for the forces coming in. Let me check that real quick. Okay, yeah, so you do have to roll, and so the Spanish will definitely stick around. So basically, you roll a die, and if it's 5 or greater, then the forces get to come in. Now, it's kind of crazy that in an instance in which there's a field battle outside of a city, that's not automatic. That may be an errata, but from what I can read in the section about sieges, it says if the friendly force outside of the city hex initiates combat with the besieging force, inside the besieged forces inside the city may attempt to reinforce combat as may other forces adjacent starting in the second round. It says may attempt. So if you go back to the section in the combat side about bringing in extra forces, I do not see anything about there being any special allowances for those particular forces. it just says you roll a die, and if it's 5 or more added by the leadership roll, then it succeeds. Yeah, so I don't see anything. So we'll go with it. Since the Spanish aren't going to leave, we're going to try it once. We're probably going to get obliterated here if this doesn't work. But yeah, basically they need a 4, 5, or 6. So it's a 50-50 shot. And we'll roll over here. And it's a 5, thank goodness. So best res will come in. So it's that same thing I said earlier, 8 to 7. And the larger force is the French. So 2 die. The modifiers are the same. This time we have 8 at 1 to 1. So it's a 1 and 1. That one's pretty simple. They both just lose 1 strength point. Well, that's not true. It's easy to think that. So the total strength of the smaller force is 7. So the result is 1. So they both lose 1. So 1 from the French and 1 from the Spanish. And I'm putting up all the casualty forces into their respective force pools so that those can come back in later. So now it's 7 to 6. They can keep going, but they know that it's not getting better. So they may try one more round. Yeah, I think they're gonna do, man. Nah, they're gonna cut and run. So they're gonna end the combat. They still did more than they took, but they don't want to risk that anymore. So they're going to end the combat. Then we will go, once that is over, they'll basically withdraw 1 space. And so they'll go across the Douro River Douro, to here. Besserez is here. Joseph takes this. The siege marker goes away, as does the bow. And then leader casualties. Each player rolls 2 dice for each of his named leaders, which occupied a hex in which any friendly strength points were committed. At the player's option, flip such upside, yada 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 yada. If the is less than 12, the leader is unharmed. If a 12 is rolled, the leader is considered a casualty. So we will roll for all 4, I guess. Each player rolls 2 dice for each of his named leaders, which occupies a hex in which a friendly combat point were committed. So just the 2 named guys. See the 2, oh no, there's 3 named guys. Right? No, there is 4 named guys. So we'll go with Spanish first with Blake. So he has an 11. Easy, buddy. And then Cuesta, he has a 10. Not great. There's enough, but Joseph, 5. Besserez, 4. So yeah, there's a pretty lengthy explanation of a combat round, but that's it in full. So now the French will, that's the end of the combat round, so go to the siege now. So they do have a siege that they can roll on. So let me straighten this back out here. They have to roll here. So if it's a 2 or better, 2 or less, then that siege is over. And it's a 2 exactly. Wow, what a turn for the French. So just like in Barcelona, this siege is successful. And the forces will go to the force pool. I was correct earlier when I said that the campaign scenario has prisoners of war. Those are not used in the scenarios, so we're not going to use them.
So Valencia is captured, and that's big for the French because now those two forces can't be used in the same way that we just saw, where Castaños comes in and then is relieved by the two forces inside. So overall, a really, really good turn for the French. It goes over to the Spanish now, who will do supply. Everybody to, as far as I can see, he now is probably not in supply. Yeah, he's not in supply anymore. Before he was tracing supply through San Sebastian, but now he is no longer in supply. So each of those guys will need to roll. So Blake has 5 and Cuestas has 1. So we'll do Blake, Cuesta. Oh, 2 6s. So let's go check the attrition table. And right there, all unsupplied +1, all units in home country -1, +1 because they're in Spain. So actually they do both lose a strength point, so that's even worse. Cuesta is actually, all of his forces are gone. I don't know if he can, like, because they're in the same hex, if they can, like, transfer forces or not. I'll look that up, but he may have to come off the board. Or he might just stay there, honestly. I know that leaders can travel by their own, so that's probably what the case is. So that's unfortunate. August is when we have reinforcements come in. So we'll look on, I have the sheet up here, and we'll bring in Wellington, who has 2 infantry, and I'll do that in a second. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap this up because you saw the turn sequence from the other side. I'll do the same thing for the Spanish and then wrap up this August turn. Okay, so we did the reinforcements and replacements. Wellington arrived here on the west coast in Portugal. He's going to try and march down there and liberate Lisbon. Shouldn't be that difficult because they're out of supply and the siege should be pretty short. So, it shouldn't be too difficult. In fact, I don't even know why the French even bothered. They may just decide to try and fight a field battle instead. And then replacement points, the way that works is you have city points. So basically, the Portuguese and the Spanish count up the amount of cities they control, which is all the ones that are French occupied. Major cities, which are the ones in red, give you 2. The ones that are in black give you 1 as minor cities, and you get a total number. So the Spanish right now have 20 city points, the Portuguese 4, and then you can spend those to buy replacement points. You cannot buy infantry or cavalry until you have bought all of the militia and partisan units. So you start off with 10 militia and 6 partisans, or I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head. I've got them here in their force pools. But you have to buy all of those before you can buy your regular forces. So that's the thing about fighting with your regular forces for the Spanish, which is why I decided to retreat, is you can keep going, but when you lose your regular forces, it's going to take a while to get them back. So they went ahead and spent 20 points. It's much more expensive to buy replacements for the Spanish and the Portuguese, but they also get more of them, so you can see how that works. They placed 4 militia here. They have a morale of 0, so that's why that's good. They just need to get more forces here, so they're gonna pull back across the river, reinforce, and then decide where to go. This city's probably pretty safe for now. San Sebastian they're a little bit worried about, but that's a pretty long supply line that they can pick off if needed. Now the Spanish will move, or the allies can move, and there's some decisions here to make. The big ones being what to do with Palafox, because if he attacks here, then Victor can reinforce on the second turn, assuming his roll succeeds. So they would be outnumbered there, only slightly. He has 2, 4, 6, and Victor has 5, and Leader C has 3. So he would be outnumbered by 2. So if they attack here, he would have to retreat back. So it's not ideal. He doesn't want to get trapped in a siege in Barcelona because they'll likely have to surrender. So he may, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the maximum he could reach. But they would have to force march some of their guys. So maybe that's an idea. Then they would all probably just converge. So that's not great. The other one is Castaños. What to do with him? Does he continue on? Because he's out of supply. I don't have the marker there, but he is somewhat vulnerable. Castaños has 6, so he could go over there and try and put down him in the siege. And that might allow Palafox a way out, because if he withdraws across the river and then the siege is started here, they 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 is actually 1, 2, 3. So yeah, they could set up a fight here, which would release Palafox, and then Castaños could just one round and withdraw. I'm not sure if you can withdraw across a river hex side without there being a bridge or not. I think you can. But that could let him out. And then these guys are going to have to pull back. So there's a lot of thinking I'm going to do here, so I'm going to do it and then just show you at the end. Okay, so we got one battle here. Palafox decided to pull across the Ebro River and stick that hex side between him and whoever might come, to try and give himself something to kind of bobble back and forth between those modifiers there. Over here, Wellington just doesn't have the forces right now. If you take a look at the combat loss chart, you really need 5 at least, 4, 5, and then 6 really to negate the amount of losses that your opponent's taking. Not very many results of these does the attacker or the smaller force lose none. In fact, they don't really have any of those where they lose none and the attacker loses 1, unlike other systems. So it's pretty hard to grind down an opponent's force with a smaller force. It's possible, but you would need you need 12 in yours and they need 20 in theirs. That's definitely possible, but not the number. So he's gonna wait, gather more forces, and then think about attacking Lisbon. So the one attack will be here, Castaños, Valencia, and the Spanish probably are just hoping for a siege, but the French are going to fight a field battle because the Spanish have 6 strength points. They have 5. So they want to see if they can't take that number down a little bit and then have leader C pull down and relieve the siege. They don't really want to win this field battle. They just want to reduce the numbers so that when these guys get here, because remember, when they're in the siege, they attack on the first round, and then on the second round, they try and bring in the forces from inside the city. Well, that may not work. So if there's 6 strength points against this French leader here of 4, then they could be outnumbered. Whereas if they whittle them down to 4 or 3, then at least they have a better shot. They have the larger number when it gets to field battle outside of Valencia. So that's what they're going to try and do, basically just take out some of those Spanish strength points. So it'll be a +1 modifier for the French because of morale. There's no other modifiers because they have 0, 0, and there's no terrain of note. So roll them up here. 3 and a 2, so it's going to be a 5 and then down 1. So D1, 1. That's not great for the Spanish. So the smaller force is 5, so D1, 1. They both only lose 1, but the Spanish have a morale, reduce their morale by 1, And if you look, let's see here, in the combat sequence, yada yada, inactive player may withdraw, may attempt reinforcement. All forces in combat with a morale of 0 must withdraw. So the Spanish previously had a morale of 1, and then if that's reduced by 1, that puts them down to 0. So they actually will have to retreat, from my understanding. Let me know if that's not correct. But not only will the attack not succeed, they have to retreat. They won't even get to do the siege and toss the die in hopes of 1 at the end. But yeah, if they're demoralized by 1 and all of their forces have 1 morale, that takes them down to 0. And all forces in combat with a morale of 0 must withdraw. So if they're all reduced by 1, they would all have 0. Yeah, so I think that's correct. So that will end this battle. Do a roll for leader casualties just in case. And then I'm going to wrap this one. I'm going to package this together, these 4 months, May to August, and then we'll do September, kind of maybe finish the year of 1808 in the next episode. But I'll double check on this really quick and add an addendum to this episode if that's not correct. But otherwise, we'll get on to the next episode. I'll put this one up. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the new series. Please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell your friends about it. Thanks for watching.